Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your break. The next talk is about COVID precautions that we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing our best to be extremely careful. Please, please, this is not something to brush aside. Take it seriously. Always, if you're going to make a mistake, make a mistake on the side of caution. Okay. So I'm going to introduce Sylvia, who's up here already, who's going to talk about COVID protocols.
Hi. So, as Father said, my name is Sylvia. I have been volunteering at St. Peter's for a very long time. Honestly, I lost count at 10 years. I don't really know. But professionally, I'm an attorney. I do a lot of small business practice. So part of my main practice is a lot of business analysis and assessing a company's liability and where they can take precautions to minimize that liability. So, excuse me, I'm going to apply that to our COVID-19 protocols and all of the programs across the diocese. So as you guys all know, numbers are rising, cases are rising, not just San Diego County, all different counties all over. So there are a lot of precautions that we need to take here to make sure our kids are safe, to make sure that our volunteers are safe, to make sure that we're not getting complaints, that the church is not getting calls, that their kid got sick, or a volunteer came in sick and was coughing in class, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of very strict guidelines that we need to follow. And you guys all know, excuse me, sorry. You guys all know that the church has taken their own precautions. Mass is outdoors. There's a lot of disinfecting. We see parish council cleaning all the time. We've limited the number of people that are at Mass. More masses get added for that reason and things like that. So the programs need to take an extra layer of caution. There is a lot of liability that comes with running our programs. The main liability is, somebody calls the county, the church gets a call, and our programs get shut down. It's the last thing we want. For a lot of these kids, these programs are very important. They're home all week long, they're on Zoom all week long. They need these programs, so we don't want them to get shut down. So to minimize the liability, one of the main things that I've done, and if your program does not have this yet, you need to let me know, is a liability waiver. So the waiver needs to get signed whenever a student registers for your program. It's signed by the parent, because I believe all the kids we deal with are under 18, so the parent has to sign it. The waiver acknowledges that they recognize that there is a virus going on, there are risks with their children attending this program, but they're waiving that liability on the church. So they're signing up their kid, regardless of these risks. They don't have a problem with it. They know the risk is there. They know there's a possibility that a kid can show up and spread this virus, but they want their kid there anyways. If there's a parent that's not willing to sign this waiver, their kid can't attend. And there's no exception to that. Any child that is signed up for a program within the entire diocese has to have a waiver on file. If you've already started registration and you haven't had a waiver signed yet, the first day they come into church, they need to sign the waiver. If your program does not have a waiver yet, find me before we leave here today, give me your program name, I'll tailor a waiver to your program because it's extremely important. So that's the main way we can kind of minimize this liability. We don't ever want it to spread from any of our programs. We don't want anybody to get sick from any of our programs, and we don't want any of our volunteers to get sick from any of our programs. So it's extremely important to have these on file. So that's kind of just general waiver and liability things, but what can we do even further to make sure that we're minimizing the risk? So what we're gonna do as far as the students, what we expect from our students and children is every program needs to limit their registration. There can't be an exception to that. You need to set a limit according to how much space you have to make sure children are spread out properly, to make sure that there is enough room for whoever is leading or teaching, as well as a certain number of students to be in a safe space. So your registration has to be limited according to your space. And just kind of a general statement is every county has different guidelines. So I know this is going out to every parish in our diocese. Follow your county guidelines. As far as San Diego, I think everybody here in this room knows our guidelines pretty well. So your coordinator needs to be following San Diego County guidelines. Other parishes need to follow the guidelines of their county. So we're limiting number of registration. That's the main way. That's the first thing we can do, is we can limit how many children are in a room. The next thing we need to do is when those children attend our programs, we have to check their temperatures upon arrival. There needs to be 1 to 2 helpers standing outside checking temperatures as they arrive. There is no exception to that. And anybody that walks in and their temperature reads 100, they need to go home immediately. They shouldn't even come in the building. Take them aside, call their parent, send them home. And there can't be an exception to that either, because you do not, again, I'm going to say it probably a million times during this talk, you do not want to risk spreading the virus or allowing somebody in that can spread it. So temperature of 100, they need to go home. Masks are required at all times for students and volunteers. I'll get into volunteer role in a little bit, but for students. And our ages kind of vary, so I know with the younger students it might be a little bit more difficult. Emphasize the importance of wearing the mask from the first day. It needs to be emphasized. If you get into the older groups and you're having defiant children who don't want to wear their mask or think it's funny to take it off or whatever it may be, you need to implement a system. 1 warning, 2 warnings, 3rd warning, they're going home. And if they continue to be a problem, you need to call that parent and let them know they can't be in the program anymore. Because we can't have a kid who thinks, you know, I just don't wear a mask and I'm fine and whatever it may be. Just can't have that risk. Because once one child tries to get away with it, others are going to, and it's just going to spiral. So there needs to be a system in place. Confirm it with your coordinator. But what I think is the best is 2 warnings. On the 3rd, they go home. And then if you notice that somebody is showing symptoms and still showed up, coughs, shortness of breath, just kind of looks like they're not feeling too well, take them directly to your administration team, send them home. Even if it's something minor, we have to be overly cautious in this situation. So anything that kind of seems like they're a little bit off, you just need to send them home at that point. And just make sure that they're kind of follow up with the parents, see how they're feeling, and if they're still not feeling well the following week for the program, advise the parents that they shouldn't come. If you're ever informed that later on that a child tests positive and there may be potential exposure, you need to let your coordinator know, and you need to let your entire program know, just for safety of our volunteers too. One other major way that we can kind of minimize this spread is, and I don't know if this applies to all youth groups, this applies a lot to the communion programs, is we're not selling snacks this year. Selling snacks causes a huge group of people waiting, shoving, pushing. There's no way to distance them. They're just all waiting to grab their snacks. So there will not be any sold by us. Kids can bring their own snacks. There is going to still be a small break as far as communion programs, at least for St. Peter's. Those breaks need to be monitored extra closely. Kids need to not really be roughhousing, be very close together. The break needs to be used as just a breath of fresh air for them, let them reset, get ready for their second session or whatever it may be, and just kind of have extra volunteers on hand monitoring the kids through that to make sure they're still socially distant, just sit, eat your snack, and go back into class. Same kind of goes for bathroom breaks. If they need to use the restroom, we kind of need somebody to monitor and make sure there's not too many kids kind of congregating in the restroom areas, and making sure that, you know, kids are not lining up at the drinking fountain before they run back to class or whatever it may be. So if you need extra volunteers on hand to control that, just get the extra volunteers, make sure they're okay. While the kids are on break, if there is classroom switches at any time, classrooms need to be fully sanitized in between those switches. So again, another reason to get extra volunteers. Kids are out on break, somebody needs to be in the classrooms, cleaning all the desks, making sure everything is wiped down fully before new kids come into that classroom. And as far as the children, that's the main things that we can do. Of course, just always keep your eye out. If something looks weird, make sure you're going to your coordinator and letting them know. So for our volunteers, going back to what Father Daniel said, we have to lead by example. We have to show a united front as volunteers. as volunteers, we're the first person the parents are going to see, we're the first person that the children are going to see. So if they walk into the office on the first day of communion or your youth group, and there's a bunch of volunteers standing there with no mask on, the children, it's not setting a good example for the children to just walk in and immediately be told, you need to put your mask on. So we need to have our masks on at all times. That gets a little hard with teaching, and I understand that, but we're going to have to do it. If you want to invest in one of those clear face shields so the kids can see your face, go for it. But as long as you are covered and protected, protecting yourself and protecting the kids, that is the important thing. So you have to be able to show the children that you are taking the proper precautions and the same thing that you're expecting from them. I'm wearing a mask, you should be wearing a mask too, kind of thing. All coordinators need to be checking the temperatures of their volunteers when they arrive as well. If you have a volunteer that shows up, same thing, at 100 temperature, they need to go home. We're all adults in this room, so if you do not feel good, please just let your coordinator know and don't attend. It's okay. Just give them as much notice as you possibly can. If you wake up that morning and you just do not feel good at all, be cautious. Don't attend, let your coordinator know, and we'll figure out a substitution. It's better to be overly safe in this situation. So you guys will all have your temperatures checked when you arrive. If you have been exposed since the last time you saw your group, you have to let your coordinator know too. That's our responsibility to let the group know, let other parents know if necessary. So please don't just say you don't feel good and stay home. If you have been exposed or if you do get a positive test, we need to know. And then if anybody, same thing that kind of goes for the kids. If the kids don't want to follow the rules, they're going to get sent home. If the volunteers don't want to follow the rules, or if you don't like them, you're going to be asked not to teach or to lead. And it's as simple as you are representing the church in your role as a volunteer, and you need to know that you don't want to add an extra layer of liability onto the church. The last people that we should worry about should be our volunteers. We don't want to worry that somebody doesn't know to stay home if they don't feel good. Again, all adults, we all know that we should take the proper precautions at this point. So as far as our expectations and our guidelines, those are the main things that we could follow. If you guys have questions regarding the guidelines or things like that, you can let me know. One of the other main things I want to touch on is how to make the best out of teaching and leading during this time, because it is a little hard. It's harder to do it with a mask on. You're not as interactive, and it's harder to catch the children's attention. So my main tip for that is really focus on getting them engaged and interactive. Get them to, ask as many questions as you can. Try to get the discussions going as much as you can so they're not just sitting there or feel like zombies just sitting there with their masks on. Again, these kids are sitting home probably all week long on Zoom, and this might be the only in-classroom interaction they get with other children or with somebody, teaching them this subject matter. So we have to be able to engage them and get them open and talking and things like that, because there's been just a lot of in-person interactions been taken away from them. So again, my biggest suggestion is probably one of those face shields, just because if they could see your face, I feel like it's a little bit more interactive. And then, you can always take that off before you come to Mass and put on your regular mask. But for teaching itself, I think that's probably the best thing ever. And then I don't have it with me today, but I'm going to put together a little brochure for all of your programs so that you guys all have the guidelines, the protocol, the proper, cleaning techniques, and what to really let the parents know and things like that. And then the waiver, again, if your program needs a waiver, does not have one already, please, before we leave here today, let me know and give me the name of your program, and I'll tailor it directly to you.